Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ruby Higgins, and I'm going to do my presentation on Korean genealogy and how it changed the family dynamic and inheritance and stuff, things like that over the course of the Joseon Dynasty. Professor Peterson has talked about this a lot, so it might be kind of repeat information, but hopefully it's just as interesting. So Korea has claimed to be the best of the best in a lot of things, in a lot of areas. One of them is metallurgy. Right? They have the metal movable type, and they also have gold work, and a lot of their dining ware, like their bowls and their chopsticks, are all in metal, kind of signifying that they're really good at that. They also have printing, so they're years before Gutenberg ever invented his printing press. They had printing. Celadon, their Celadon pottery is exquisite. But one of the interesting things that they also are really good at is their family records. It's one of the most complete records in all of the world, mostly because of how important it was for society in that time. So yeah, this is just a picture of what a toko would look like. So the history of the family history. Originally, it was only kept by the upper class. Like the Yongbang class would keep it. In as early as the 57 BC, we see the starting of records, of family records. And this is during the Shiba period, so this is even before the Koryo period. Most likely, the reason why there's so many few records is because before this time, people didn't have surnames. And to have kind of an accurate genealogy you can trace back, you have to have a surname, you have to have a family name to be able to trace it. Because if you only have first names, how accurate could that really be? And surnames from around this time came from China, so that's why you see an emerging family record. All right, so when we see really the kind of the start of a family record is during the Koryo Dynasty. It became increasingly important because in order to be able to take the civil service exam, you had to prove your lineage. And your lineage was important because only the elite Yangban class, or the Holy Bone class, or something like that, could take the exam. So there was a rule of 4. So on your exam, you had to write down your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and then your mother's father to make sure that you weren't, to prove your Yangban, you're not the son of a slave or a concubine. In Korean family history, really peaked around the 1600s and the 1700s. Okay, so the Korean word for family record is chokbo. The word emerged really during the Joseon Dynasty. They didn't really use this word before. The reason why it did emerge is because in the Joseon Dynasty, people became obsessed with their family line. People wanted to trace back their line as far as they could to make sure that people knew that they were like the best of the best. Like they had famous people in their line. Also, civil service exams became the center of society. And also, most importantly, probably is that when you died, you wanted to make sure that you had your ancestral rites done for you in order to complete your life. I don't know really just because you died. But so I have a quote here from one of the earliest chokbo. It says, "If the names of the family members of the descent group are not recorded, there is no way of knowing who they are, and it was impossible to know the difference between distant and near, close and remote, and relatives from whence they originated." So it was so important for them to be able to record their family names in the book. So when you're compiling a chokbo, first you start out with your founding ancestor, and usually this ancestor is kind of like a legend, a little bit of a myth, probably existed, but the stories that are behind it maybe didn't exist. I think we talked a lot about like the Kong family, how they came from this boy who like emerged from a well, or I can't quite remember what the story was, but it was obviously maybe not entirely true, but yeah, that does sound like to me. Maybe that was. So yeah, usually he's kind of shrouded in this mystical, godlike sense. Then you you kind of fill in the blanks, blah, 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 and then you get to a middle ancestor who's probably more of a viable person. Probably exists, there's probably records of him, maybe he was a really great scholar, and these people probably came from about 1300, usually the legitimate person. And then usually the names of like early ancestors, they didn't record them, so a lot of the names are remembered orally, like an oral record. There is skepticism on how many people are actually viable in the early records. Usually the later ones are all true, but it's kind of like a fill in the blank. You don't want to have an empty spot. So sometimes the name could be someone, maybe it was a real relative, but it didn't live in this time, or it was the wrong order. Also, because they started collecting these records more significantly in the Joseon period, they used Joseon title names. So if someone had a higher up title in the Koryo period, they forgot the word for that, so they just added like scholar onto it, or these titles onto it. Sometimes fabricated to make yourself look a little bit better, but they also sometimes just didn't know. They knew they were up higher in society, but they didn't know the Koryo version of it, so they just added a Joseon version of it. So when historians look back, they're kind of like, well, in the Koryo period, this title didn't even exist, and it can kind of lead to skepticism of the viability of someone's family record. So my paper, I focused mostly on the difference between the early Joseon period and later Joseon period. So my thesis is, in 2nd century Joseon, the following dynasty brought a new wave of Confucianism to the Korean peninsula. This caused dramatic change in the family dynamic, which is most obvious through the study of genealogical records of the era. Some significant changes that will be discussed are inheritance, the roles of women, and agnatic adoption. In this presentation, because I'll be way too long, I'm just really going to focus on the inheritance of people. Okay, so early Joseon. This is 1400 to about 1600. Confucianism was a prominent part of society. It was the ideological part of society, but it was done in Korean style. So they had their daughters didn't inherit the family's property. They had kind of like what Rachel was talking about. There was equal inheritance among your siblings. Funeral rights duties, they were also shared. Also, the heir, it could be a son or a daughter. Oh no, don't want to. You guys hate that? I hate that. You're like trying to do something and it like wants to restart it. Oh yeah, the heir. So the heir could be a daughter or a son, which is I thought was kind of interesting. And also when it comes to adoption, sometimes the family, if they didn't have a child, they couldn't have a child, they would adopt. It didn't matter if they adopted a daughter, or if they adopted a son, or if it was even in the same family line. This is very, very different from what you see in the later Joseon period. So I'm going to focus on two case studies. One is the Yogu family. He's the famous Confucius scholar that's on the 1001, the 21. So this is a document that was his parents did. So this is him and his 6 other siblings. I think actually Professor Peterson might have. He got the same amount of inheritance as his sisters, so they all got equal amounts, which is really interesting. So this is in 1566, which is just before the Ming Dynasty fell. I chose these two because they're like one is right before, one's right after. The lesser sons of the Soja, the illegitimate children, did receive a little bit less, but that was according to the inheritance code that kind of followed. The second document is Shimsa-Yimdan, who is his mother. So the scholar's mother, so this is like 1545, was one of 5 daughters. Now, there wasn't any sons, I believe. Yeah, the document states there was no sons. So each daughter got an equal share, which is kind of interesting. However, it did indicate that the male offspring of the eldest daughter, which would be her, would perform the rites. So that would be a good friend. Their third, this is all in the same family, is Eo Roots. parents-in-law, so his wife's parents. They also had no sons, interestingly enough. And so he was given the duty to separate everything equally amongst all of the children. So that is not what we would expect from if we were just to look at later Joseon period when it comes to inheritance. Or even if someone didn't study it, they would think, oh, it's always been a patriarchal society. So all of a sudden, the Ming Dynasty follows. Oh no, Big Brother is down. Now we have the Manchus coming in. They're not Chinese. And all of a sudden, Korea had the mindset of we have to be more Chinese than China, we have to be more Confucian than Confucius. And the rights will be done right. The eldest son will mourn for 3 years, the daughters will mourn for only 1. This was not the case before. Usually it was just kind of cycling, like one way or the other. Rotate when it comes to ancestral rights. So, this is case study number 2, which is the Kuan Kims. Their household, the way they inherited things changed dramatically. We have a quote here right from one of the declarations. It says, "There is no difference in the degree of affection between parent and child, whether son or daughter, but daughters are different from sons. They do not perform the ceremonies for the parents when they die. So this being so, how can a daughter possibly expect to share property equal to that of a son?" This is where we see that daughters finally became not as equal to the sons. So they got, because they only did 1/3 of what the sons could do, they became 1/3 shareholders. It seemed fair to the scholars who were saying this. Eventually, it became that they got nothing. They didn't get any inheritance, and all went to the other son. And this is where we see that Joseon gradually became more and more patrilineal of a society. Okay. So, modern perception. I've asked my friends. I actually told my friends this, and they were surprised. They didn't know that before it was an equal inheritance. They just always thought that it was a patrilineal society. So, in conclusion, New Confucianism did bring a lot of drastic changes when it came to the family dynamic, and we can see that mostly through the family record. If you're a woman, there's really bad changes, but if you're the eldest son, they're really great changes because you got everything. Any questions? Can I ask the answer?